It's time for the show must go on. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's wonderful guest is Bonné Bartron. Let's get the show going. I was told you are a award-winning Hollywood director. When did you first have an interest for directing?
Well, I always loved the idea of telling stories, and I used to get my friends together and stuff and make movies when I was a kid. And I think I always wanted to be a director. I just didn't know what it was called. I directed a few things whenever I was, even young, like plays and stuff at my school. I was the student director and loved it. But I didn't realize it was actually a career goal or something that was attainable until I was in high school and started doing interviews with bands that came to Germany. And when I got to interview a bunch of metal bands like Papa Roach and Soulfly and all kinds of great ones, Disturbed. And that was kind of when I realized that filmmaking wasn't just for people who were born into it. And that's when I really decided that that was my path in life.
And then in that moment, what did you do what was the encouragement, I'll say, or your bravery that chose to actually take the pathway? Because entertainment is definitely not easy to get into. So what was the thing that said, I'm going to do this? I'm not going to, as they say, you should go to college and have a backup plan. What made you say this is exactly what I'm going to do?
Well, I did go to college, and I did, study in school and stuff, but it was pretty much through that I realized that I was kind of wasting my time. My high school teacher, Mr. Fritz, really took me under his wing in a lot of ways and sent me out to do the training for Final Cut Pro when it came out, and he had me teach him how to do it. And he just had a lot of faith in me and encouraged me a lot. And he's the reason I started doing the interviews with the bands. And so whenever I graduated high school, I went out to California. I won a bunch of awards when I was in high school for filmmaking, for music videos, a mockumentary I made, just some things. So I really thought coming to LA would be simple. I was very delusional in that way. I thought LA would be waiting for me with a bag of money and a red carpet at the airport. That did not happen. And that was when I decided to go back to school for a while because I wanted to just kind of figure out my options. And originally I kind of thought that I was going to just be a lawyer, not just be, but that was my path, that I was thinking that I was going to be a lawyer. And then when I went into college, I started studying psychology and English as a double major for my undergrad. And long story short, I just decided that as much as it was a good thing to go to school and to have the experience of it and whatnot, it was also learning about things that other people thought instead of thinking things for myself. And that was when I decided to just put it all in and go to Hollywood and make it happen. And yeah, that was really the precipitating moment for me when I was just yep, I'm not going to be happy doing anything else. And that even when I was in college, I was working at the local TV station, the local news station, covering all their events. I would direct from their van. It was really fun. Actually doing live TV directing was a lot of fun. And an old switchboard in the back of the van. But yeah, and then I just decided I know how hard LA is now, but I'm going to make it happen. And that was it.
So when you got to Hollywood, did you start out directing or did you start with, interning or doing other positions before you got into directing?
Well, so I definitely did not start out directing. I was very young. And when I came out, I actually just knocked on doors pretty much until somebody gave me a chance. And that was Chris Moore. He hired me on The Funeral Director. And there I met my best friend and mentor, Sage Stallone. And Sage really took me under his wing in a lot of ways and just kind of showed me how accessible it was to see the path to directing, if that makes sense. He also told me that if I wanted to be a good or great director and not just a good director, I needed to learn everybody's job on set so I could help them realize the vision better. And that was probably the best advice anyone's ever given me. I worked in every single department on set. And I mostly worked as a production designer and set decorator. But I did get, jobs as a first AD and, in camera, in lighting, like I did everything. And I think that really helped me understand not just how to communicate with the different departments, but also what I really wanted to see from them. Instead of just being like, oh, I think I want some blue light in here. Like I knew exactly what words to use to get the exact effect that I wanted. And these were things that you don't usually learn, you get a concept of them in film school and whatnot, but you don't really understand what the people are doing and their timing and stuff. So that was something that really changed my life and the way I looked at filmmaking, that it's absolutely a team sport and that every single element is the most important element.
So what was your very first film you got the chance to direct in Hollywood?
So the very first thing I ever directed was a 48-hour film festival piece that I did with a group. And I wrote it, we shot it and edited it in 48 hours, which was a crazy thing to do. And I would suggest doing it once to every filmmaker because you'll only want to do it once. Unless you're a glutton for punishment. But that was honestly a really rough situation. But like it ended up being something that taught me a lot. There were people on that project who, like I was the only, I was the youngest person there and I was a woman and all of the crew were men, including the camera guy. And the camera guy argued with me on every single step of the way, and it felt like very stressful. But like I realized even though, I was in a position where I felt like, would you actually treat a director this way, like a male director this way? It still kind of taught me how to overcome even like that kind of a situation. Because I didn't actually pick the crew on that. The producers picked the crew, everything. Like I didn't know anybody on that project. And so that was the last time I ever worked with a project or with a crew on a project that I didn't choose myself.
Well, lesson learned, right?
Yep. But it was a really important lesson. And I think that's something that any filmmaker, no matter, who you are, what what your gender is, your identification, your race, anything, like it's about finding the people who get your vision and support you more than anything else, like support the vision. And I think that's like one of the things we don't really realize about filmmaking is just how important it is that everybody's in sync. It's a machine, and somebody has to be the head, but somebody also has to be the hand. You can't do anything without either, So, yeah, I think that's a big lesson that I'm grateful I learned. I just, hope nobody else has to learn that coming up next.
So were you in the midst of working on anything before 2020 interrupted you?
Yeah. So I have a film that I wrote years and years ago, and it went through so many iterations. And it's a stoner film with two women as the leads, and it's a movie like everyone who's read it's like I've never seen anything like this. I've never heard of anything like this. And so that was something that was really difficult to get traction on because, like, first of all, it's original, and that's very scary in this world because it's not a tried and true place. And when I first came out with this movie, there was a lot of interest from people, but they wanted me to make the main characters men. They were like, this would be a great story for men. And I was like, but it's not about men. It's about these two women, and this is who they are. Like, that it's not, they're not, men. they're women. That's why I wrote them that way. And long story short, for a long time, there just wasn't any interest in them. Finally, with 2016 and people starting to pay attention to women's stories a little bit more, I started getting a lot of traction on it. And in fact, we were casting it. We were supposed to be shooting it last fall. We were working with, I should say, we are working with Barton Schnee for casting, really wonderful casting agency. And we'd been doing auditions and we had everything all ready to go. And it just obviously froze over. And sadly, I actually had 2 projects happening in 2020. Another one is called The Sinking City, and it's based on a true story. And that one, Billy Ray Cyrus and I developed together with the family that the story is actually based on. And that one also was supposed to shoot in 2020, and it was supposed to be a pretty momentous thing, shooting 2 movies back to back. But then, you know, everything ground to a halt. And to be quite frank with you, like I did take it very hard, but at the end of the day, everybody is suffering in 2020. So like, I kind of had to just take it with a grain of salt too. Like, you know what? I still have my health. And a lot worse could have happened during 2020. So yeah, but it was very sad. I'm not going to lie. It was very sad.
So if things, you know, in the far future, or just for fun, if you could work with anyone in the entertainment business on any, you know, level, whether it's director, actor, camera person, whoever, and whether they're dead or alive, anyone who inspires you, anyone who encouraged you to do what you're doing, who would this person be?
Wow, that is like the hardest question I think anyone's ever asked me. I mean, the list is so long, to be honest. Federico Fellini, Stanley Kubrick. I mean, these were people that like I admired so much growing up. I just loved their movies. I mean, there's so many. I mean, alive, I'd have to say Tim Burton has been one of my absolute favorite directors of all time. But it's hard to say like who I would work with, living or dead. I mean, there's just such a list. I'm such a fan of, you know, everybody in our business, to be honest. Like that's one of the reasons that, you know, I wanted to work in it is I love working with artists, and I love people bringing something that's their own. And it's so hard to like say one is better than another, or like one I want more than the other, because, you know, it's about the flavor and the palette when you're working together. So yeah, that's a really difficult question. I think that's going to have to be the extent of my answer on it too. I like that's hard. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Alan Rickman, these were people I wanted to work with so bad. And, you know, it was such a huge loss whenever they passed, you know, so and there's so many contemporaries though that are just fantastic, and so many people I'm getting the opportunity to work with. I think that's the greatest part about being a writer director and like sticking it out, because it is a climb. Like that's something I don't think a lot of us really understood. I didn't coming out here, is like what how much time and effort it really takes to be able to get to where you want to go. But that's why, you know, being where I am right now, I'm so grateful, because I am getting the opportunity to work with some absolutely fantastic actors, and filmmakers and production designers and camera people and producers. And, you know, it's just, it's a joy. Living the dream, my friend, living the dream.
Well, that's all the time we have for you today on The Show Must Go On. I want to thank our wonderful guest, Bonné Bartron, for taking the time to stop on by and sharing her journey with us, and for you, the audience, for taking the time to watch. Thank you. Have a great day.